Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
With a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, my brothers and sisters, I'm somewhere behind this banner. Good Sunday afternoon to you. I trust and pray that you have had a wonderful, marvelous day, that you were blessed by your worship experience this morning, that you received the word that went forth from your pastor or preacher, whether it is your own or your Facebook or YouTube preacher. We are so glad that you are here today. I'm excited to invite you to join me and some of the most distinguished preachers in our Zion today at the Pastors Roundtable. We got some great ones that are going together. We got some topics and issues that we are going to discuss. But before I do that, let me give thanks to God for another opportunity to come before you today. I'm a little worn out. I took my second child, my son, to Tougaloo College in Mississippi to begin his freshman year. He got a full music scholarship. He's a pianist. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. And we thank God and we pray God's covering over him. Last week, I took my daughter to her junior year. And to all of you who have children in school, we pray God's blessings and coverings over them. I greet our Senior Bishop Lawrence L. Reddick III and Sister Wendy Jones Reddick, our First Lady. I also greet Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter and Sister Rosia Carter. Bishop Carter is the chair of the College of Bishops and our Distinguished College of Bishops. I greet them and their spouses and our CIT committee, of course, chaired by Bishop James Walker and co-chaired by my bishop, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr. And I greet Mrs. Walker and Dr. Louise Baker Brown. I'm so glad that you are here today, and we're going to get right to it. Because we got a lot to discuss. But before I do that, you'll see scrolling various announcements regarding the Unity Summit. We need to remind you that you need to get registered for the Unity Summit and the Lay Ministry Institute. So do your duty and get registered and be engaged and be present and be a part of all the things that are going on. Also, the archives webinar is coming up in September. This is going to be scrolling 2 days of wonderful presentations and lectures on preserving our church history. We are excited about that as well, and we want you to be a part of that. So many wonderful things going on. But I figured out, I said, how can I introduce my guests today? They are all accomplished preachers and pastors. And so you're going to get just a little sample of them as I prepare to bring them up.
Weeping can only endure as long as the dark is around, but joy comes when the morning breaks forth. I know there may be times in your life when it seems like life is dumping its best on you, but you got to remind yourself, you've got to remember that God sees your struggle and God will step in to stop.
And the educated fool, the impotent and the important, the blind, the crippled, and the crazy. Everybody was there lacking something, limited in what they could do, limited in how they performed, limited in how they produced, limited in how they function.
Influential, and now forgiving and compassionate. At this point, Jesus puts a spin on the story. You see, the old Jewish parable said that the father folded his arms turned his back and ordered the son to be driven off, because that's exactly what he deserved.
And powerful on the inside of us. And that, my friends, is why you got to do more than come to church, but you got to have an encounter with Jesus. You have to do more than act strong, but you got to be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. You got to do more than sing in the choir or serve on the board, but you got to know that you are saved in your soul.
Is your grace really enough? Even with the anointing, the ability for us to preach, prophesy about the power of the cross, the one who preached, for me to live is Christ, for me to die is gain, the one that said, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. The one who preached, I consider this present suffering.
I got me some show enough, bona fide preachers and teachers. That's for anybody who asks, why am I not on today? Your time is coming, I promise you. But I got me some preachers and teachers par excellence. Let me introduce my guest to you today, Reverend Chaplain James L. Dunbar, former presiding elder of the Oklahoma City District, now residing in Duncan, South Carolina. We also have Elder Lavisha Williams, the presiding elder of the Moultrie-McCrae Brunswick District, pastor of the St. James CME Church in Columbus, Georgia. We have the Reverend Dr. Valerie Everett, the pastor of the St. John CME Church in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We have the Reverend Dr. Van Call. His parents couldn't make up their mind in terms of whether it's going to be Van or Call, so they just said Van Call Williams, who is the pastor of the Cedar Crest Cathedral in Dallas, Texas. And last, we have a daughter of the parsonage, the Reverend Tiffiany Echoles, the distinguished pastor of the St. James CME Church in Tallahassee, Florida. Welcome to the round table, my brothers and my sisters. How are you today?
I am great. And I was, before we get started, I was curious, Dr. Skip, as to what clip, because I didn't send you a clip, what clip you was going to pull. And you would pull that one.
Listen, I may ask you to send pictures, but I'm going to pull the clips. Okay?
I know, right?
I'm going to pull the clips. But I'm so grateful to each of you. Much
Amen.
admiration to all of you. In your ministry, and you, many of you have been in this game for quite a while, and you certainly have something to say, and that's what we're going to do. We're having a conversation today, and so I'm going to jump right in, and then I'll come back and have you tell a little bit about us. So if you had the opportunity to appear before the College of Bishops, and they ask you what's on your mind with our church, Chaplain James L. Dunbar, what would you say to the College of Bishops? No holds bar. They want to hear what you have to say. What would you say right now to the college? And each one of you will respond to this question.
Well, first, let me say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be a part of this platform. I'm glad that you put my little clip up first, because after hearing all of those other preachers, I'm so glad that you didn't put me last. Because yeah, so you are my friend.
Stop it, brother.
You indeed are my friend.
Somebody's preacher. Don't even try.
I would say to our leaders, don't forget the focus of the people, and in this season in particular. We have to make sure that our push and our mission is about saving souls. We have gotten to a place to where I think sometimes we kind of lose that focus, and our focus tends to go to other things. But the commission reminds us that our focus is about drawing people to Christ. doing whatever is possible, whatever is necessary to tell the gospel message about saving souls, letting people know that Jesus saves. And I think that has to be our primary focus above everything. It has to be our primary focus. So that would be the first thing I would say. And I'm gonna kind of keep my comments short because I know others will respond as well. But that's definitely one thing I would say.
Thank you, my brother. Elder Lavisha, what would you tell the College of Bishops if they ask what's on your mind as it relates to our church?
I have a list. No, I'm just teasing. Oh my goodness, what would I say? What would I say? My heart is full because I am a lifelong born into the CME Church and have seen so much and heard so much. But one of the concerns, and I guess one of the things that's on my mind the most, is for us to take an opportunity to go back and hear why people have left the church. Hear the voices of why there has been, because this mass exodus that we'll eventually talk about on this evening has not necessarily been just at this season, but it has been going on, unfortunately, for quite a period of time. And I don't know if conversations have been had, and I could very well be wrong, because we are a connectional church and because so much that we don't know. But I would love for our leadership to hear some of the reasons as to why, and to take those things into consideration in order for us to move forward to the next dimension. I think that's where my heart is right now. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Dr. Van Call, what would you tell the College of Bishops?
I'm not as articulate as Reverend Dunbar and Elder Williams. My message would simply be, get out of the way. That's the message. It reminds me, I was a school teacher in Chicago before coming into full-time pastorate, and I was the department chair of the English department. Whenever I would talk with new teachers, and we would talk about sometimes the bureaucracy that we see in education, I would say to young teachers or newer teachers, focus on the classroom, because even as you deal with bureaucracy, there is one thing I will say, forgive me, about my principal, multiple schools. The principal cannot come into this classroom and do what I do, nor can they do what you do. You're the one that's on the front lines. You engage with students every day. Their job is administrative. You do the education. You manage the classroom. You're at the front line of it. Transitioning to full-time pastoring and ministry, I see it the same way. Much of the role of the bishop is administrative. And so once you do your work, get out of my way. I'm on the front lines, in the midst of the congregation, in the pulpit, in the church, in the sanctuary. And I don't need you to sort of intervene or be an adversary or go around or run around. You gave me my appointment. Now get out of my way and let me do what you've sent me there to do and what God has called me to do.
Thank you. Dr. Valerie, what would you tell the College of Bishops?
I pray that I stay on. I keep getting kicked out. My concern, of course, with what's going on in terms of the pandemic, the fact that we now have two congregations, if you will. And so the charge is to make sure that we stay connected to these two churches, if you will, the hybrid and our online. Many of us are not equipped for online ministry. And so how do we get the support? How do we get the investment? How do we get the buy-in, even with our intergenerational buy-in for the technology? We have some people who can care less, but we've learned over this pandemic that we do have another congregation. So my concern would be, how can we get the support that we need to be intergenerationally connected to two congregations? But not only that, but the investment that we need, because we are told we need our young people, but we have to have the support that we need. So that for me is paramount right now, to make sure that we have the support that we need to.
Okay. She's having a little connectivity issue, but she'll be back. Reverend Tiffiany, what would you tell the College of Bishops?
Basically, just to reiterate what everyone else has basically said, but at the same time, listen to our younger generation. Listen to us. I consider myself young. I'm pretty sure my children don't, but with that, listen to us. Listen to our ideas. We understand the concept of tradition, and we acknowledge tradition. However, we have to get away from traditional things at some point in time. And then let me just say this, and Dr. Skip, don't kick me off when I say this, but please stop making it all about money. It's about people. It's about saving souls, as Chaplain Dunbar mentioned. It's about the connection and the people coming together to what is the CME Church offering me as to why I should pay into it. So I think that is a discussion. That is something that I would mention to them. What are your thoughts and what are your ideas of bringing this oneness, bringing us back together, and not focusing so much on money again, but because this is the thing. If I don't have it to give and I'm hungry, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to go down to the local church and listen to the pastor or the preacher or give into the church, because when I was hungry, they did not feed me. When I needed clothing, they did not clothe me. So now, what is the purpose? What is the point of me going down there? So I think that it should be a plan of action. What is your plan of action now in this new era, in this new day and age? What is your plan of action?
Yeah. Wow. I tell you, all of these are quite profound statements that you're making, and speaking certainly truth to power. As we talk about, what we would share, I think Reverend Val mentioned about the resources for the pandemic. And I like to really just find out from you quick, how have you been able to manage during the pandemic, both with your congregation and yourself personally? Anybody just jump in?
Well, I will start it off by saying, one of the things, again, we made sure that that we focused on people in the need. And we saw with the pandemic how great the need was. I think the pandemic actually exposed to us more just how much people were in need. So often when we were, pre-pandemic, we were aware of needs, but when we were sat down, so to speak, and put into a place of isolation, it was as if God was just unfolding the book as to say, this is what's going on in our world. And although you've been participating in the world, you really haven't been paying attention to what's been going on. And so while I was pastoring, we were able to provide food boxes for over 5,000 people between the time of September and February. We were able to get food boxes out. We had a major power outage in Oklahoma City at the time, and we went to the local energy company, OG&E, and they sponsored the meats for us to be able to. Now it's cold. We don't have power in the church, but God made a way. I won't say we made a way. God made a way. We pulled the grills out, and we had a gas stove, so we had some ability to be able to cook, and we cooked food for anybody across the city. We had people all over the city coming, so we fed about 150 people. It wasn't just hot dogs and chicken. We had pork chops, whatever OG&E purchased. We had pork chops, sausage links. I mean, we were trying to take care of the needs of people, because there were people who were going 2 and 3 weeks without electricity.
Wow.
And so we were just trying to get them a hot meal, just to help them to remember what a hot meal was like. The community next door to the church was a senior community. And we discovered that they didn't have heat. A lot of those seniors over there were not being fed hot meals. And so we just did our part to try to stay focused on the needs. And it wasn't even about, hey, y'all come to our church. It wasn't even about, hey, we got this, and this going on at the church. It was just about, let me take care of your need. And if God moves on your heart for you to come to our church, then praise God.
Right.
I'm still going to focus on your need. And that's kind of where we stood.
So let me shift for a second, and then you all come in, and we assume that most churches have been able, we assume, to serve the community as best as they could. But what I want you all to also talk about is, how have you been able to take care of yourself? Because I don't know about you, but I have felt totally exhausted. Totally.
Absolutely.
Exhausted during this pandemic, and trying to serve my congregation as best as I possibly could, and so Elder Lavisha, you pastor and you're elder, over preachers. Talk about that moment, what it has been for you, and how have your preachers been faring personally, because we talk about pastoral care and self-care, and sometimes we preachers are in the worst shape ever as it
Absolutely.
Y'all
Absolutely.
chime in on that.
Well, I have a therapist that I go to and talk to. I won't mention her name, but I talk to her regularly. And that sort of helps me get through. My church here in Columbus, we experienced 8 deaths from March of last year. And so it seemed like every time I looked around, I was at the cemetery. And then what I have done as far as self-care, I sleep a lot.
Okay.
Just to rest my mind, to rest my body. I'm an HGTV fanatic. HGTV allows me to just get away. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to think about anybody. I turn my phone off at night sometimes. For my pastors, it's been phone calls. It's been just, how you doing? What you doing? And it's not calling them Reverend. It's calling them, hey, Mike, how you doing? Hey, John, how you doing?
Right.
Hey, Belinda, how you doing? And so it just sort of, it helps to take the title off and put the person in.
Right.
So that's because my district is several hours away. My closest church is 2 hours away from me. My furthest church is 4.
Right.
So I can't, necessarily be there with them. But phone calls work. And we do wellness checks.
Okay.
How's your mental health? John Wesley was the small group question. How well is it with your soul?
Yeah.
So that's my question to them.
Yeah. Dr. Van Call.
Well, I think what's helped me, and I've been able to maintain personally, as strange as this sounds. So look at that picture. By going to church. Since the pandemic has started, I have been in church every single Sunday, even preaching to empty pews. I've been in church every Sunday, because in many ways that is the therapy for me. It's one of my means and modes of therapy. And it's been refreshing to preach in an empty sanctuary, because it's been a stark reminder that God is the audience of my worship.
Right.
Come on
The
now.
audience of my ministry.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when I cannot feed in that embodied moment from the amens and the affirmation of a congregation that's physically in front of me, it puts me in tune with where I am with God in that preaching moment and in that worship moment. And it's also taught me how to preach with my phone in front of me. Isn't it amazing that we used to talk about all those folk who only did church on TV and all those televangelists a few years ago? Now all of us got some sort of online television presence. And we used to talk about people who were on their phone in church. Now, if I don't have my phone in my hand, I'm not really in church, right? Because I'm preaching and I'm looking at, the high fives or the thumbs up or the comment section while I'm preaching. That's where my amens are.
Right.
I'm trying to hold my phone and text good morning. That's where my fellowship is. And so many churches have done, whatever they could do to adjust and adapt during this time. But at Cedar Crest, we've still been doing live worship. We haven't totally shifted to pre-recording. And so many of my members have chimed in that even though I'm not there in person, I still felt like I was in church because I'm looking at who's commenting and I'm talking to them. I'm saying good morning. They're saying good morning back to me. There's still been that sort of exchange and that dialogue. And so it's been rich for me personally. Again, even though you don't have the full experience because everybody's not there, but having that empty sanctuary where I can at least go to on Sunday with the worship team, it's been good for me. It's lessened the impact of being in the midst of a pandemic for me.
Oh, wow. Dr. Val, I know you having a little technical difficulties, but you were in the midst of a statement.
I'm trying to do this.
We want to get back to you. And you were talking about, the pandemic. You brought that up and dealing with the lack of or having resources. So go ahead and finish your thought and just chime in on any thought that you have.
What's really interesting is that one of the things that, because we do have a major, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that we have a large sanctuary. And so when we started, when the pandemic hit, it's like, what are we going to do? So we turned to iPads, right? And we turned to cell phones, right? But we know that we still need more. So, but in the meantime, what we do is we try to stay focused on what we were called to do, which was to preach and to teach and to share. And so one of the things for us is that we grew closer as a church family, because one of the things that happened with us is our evangelism ministry went to a whole nother level.
Yeah, went to another level. Okay, she'll be back. Reverend Tiffiany, let me ask you this question: how long have you been pastoring?
So I was actually appointed the pastor of St. James during the pandemic.
During the pandemic?
Yes.
Wow.
Which was a challenge because now, instead of actually taking my pastoral appointment certificate and going to the church, I am now making phone calls and introducing myself via phone. And hey, I'm not sure if you know how to work Zoom, but instead of the conference call that they were accustomed to, we are now going to Zoom, so you can at least see me and I can at least see you. So it was a challenge for me, being a first-time pastor, being appointed during a pandemic, and saying, God, I've seen what other preachers do when they get an appointment, but God, what do I do in this particular situation? And so just trying to reach out to the congregation. Hey, I know I can't come over there. I actually had a member to pass away, and it was hurtful because I couldn't be there physically. And so trying to comfort them via phone was a challenge. And so I just make phone calls, and I call them to see how they're doing, check on them. But then, just like Elder Williams said, not only do I call and check on my members, but I call and check on myself. Tiffiany, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Are you okay? How what do you need from? And I ask myself, what do you need from me? What do you need me to do to help you during this time?
Sure.
And so we also had an issue with during the time. Oh Lord. But during the
See, this is what happened when you don't read your email and don't send me pictures. I go scavenging on Facebook.
He goes and finds them, Tiffiany.
Okay.
Don't let.
I am so sorry. But then also, we had an issue because when I first got to the church and I stuck the key in, I'm looking around and I'm saying, ooh, y'all, it's mold in here. So even if there wasn't a pandemic to where we were able to still be in our church, we can't go in.
Yeah.
So we finally had the mold treated. They had some issues with the ceiling. They had the roof repaired, but they did not have enough funds to repair the ceiling for the water damage. So we got that taken care of. And because of that, we were able to finally go back in as of July 11th to have in-person service. But we were able, to social distance. And like Dr. Williams said, it's kind of difficult now because now I have to make sure I set up for my Zoom viewers. I have to make sure I have somebody monitoring. And so when we extend the invitation to Christ, I have somebody watching the comments because I can't necessarily see them. So I have someone giving me feedback. So I have to give room and allow room for those persons that are logged in. And so doing that, and as well as we tried to serve the community, like Chaplain Dunbar was talking about with his congregation and things that they have done. We too were feeding our community. Not only that, but we gave them the opportunity. Listen, and this was the downstairs portion. So our upstairs was infected with mold, but the downstairs was not. Because the church does not have central air and heat, and we don't have heat at all. I want to throw that out there and let y'all know that too. But and so we were able to allow the community to come in, do some shopping, get free clothing, but as well as also feed them.
Yeah.
And because we understood and realized that during this time, a lot of persons lost their job.
Yeah.
A lot of them within the community, we try to educate on this is what's going on. It's when it came to the vaccinations, okay, we're not telling you what to do. We're telling you, we're just trying to educate you and give you the information that you need. And so when they ask the question, well, you vaccinated, which one did you take? I'm willing to share it with you. I am, and this is the one that I did. So we did a lot of educating as well during this time to just give the people, try to give them some type of hope during this pandemic, and just to say, listen, we love you. We're going through just like you are, but we love you and we care for you. And so that's what I'm still maneuvering. I'm still learning, and I know every time I walk around my house and I just say, thank you, God. But I ask that you continue to lead me and guide me and direct me. And I think God has said to me, Tiffiany, baby girl, you've had me working during this past year with you. You really had me working. And so it was a challenge. It was a challenge for me, but it was something that I was able to, and I play this song often, press my way through. When I wake up in the morning, on the way to work, I'm listening to this song. Sunday mornings, I'm listening to this song because this morning, I truly, truly needed some encouragement.
Yeah.
So I had to listen to that song and meditate on that song.
So you found ways to encourage yourself, and welcome to the world of pastoring.
Thank you.
Sometimes you will find a church whose infrastructure is in dire need of support and help. But we're glad that you are here, that you were appointed. Reverend Dr. Val, it could be the Bluetooth. Are you using Bluetooth?
Yes, but I'm on my phone now, so hopefully I can stay.
Oh, you're on your phone now.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes Bluetooth will.
I've changed over.
Okay. I love your persistence and your determination.
Yes.
That is one of the
That's what sisters
qualities.
do. Like that woman that before the judge, I ain't going nowhere.
That's right. That is one of the qualities of a CME preacher. But you were still in the midst, and we're talking about how did we survive during the pandemic. And then I want to shift gears for a moment. So let me give you a chance to comment, and then I'm gonna shoot one at all of you. So get ready.
Okay. Yeah. What I was also saying is that we found creative ways to stay connected. We established our Golden and Silver Classics ministry with our senior citizens, where we we'll go out once a month and just meet with them and share with them, drop off a gift. And so in terms of our evangelism ministry, we connected with Wake Forest. We established a mobile health clinic, and now that clinic is on site with us every single week. Across the street from us is a ministry that provides food for the community. So we stay connected in terms of evangelism. We are still, as we start up this new conference year, we're not going to let up. There were some things that we had to take care of financially last year, but we know that in order for us to stay relevant and connected, we know that the cell phones won't be enough. We know the iPad is not going to be enough. And so what I'm looking to do is bringing in the buy-in from various generations, because it can't just come from the young people and it can't just come for us. The buy-in has to be intergenerational. So that's going to continue to be our thrust. Again, one of the things that happened with us, I was sharing this morning, that we had a lot of new converts last year. And all of the converts came as a way because we did parking lot praise outside.
Yeah.
And what we received were new converts, as opposed to someone coming into somebody else's from another denomination or another church, but new converts. So the evangelism thrust stayed paramount. But we also know that what we have to do, because we have another audience, and you all know that on Sunday morning they can go to how many churches in an hour? So when our stuff messes up, you think I'm hanging around and see what Dr. Val and St. John gonna do? So again, the emphasis again is to stay connected in terms of our evangelism, but to step up our game in terms of our technology.
Wow.
You know,
awesome.
The ministry part of the pandemic hasn't really been the most demanding part for me. It's all these extra meetings we have now. We used to talk about how we meet. I have more meetings going on now during the pandemic than I did before, because of technology, everybody thinks they can send you a Zoom link and tell you they want to meet with just 1 or 2 days notice. My biggest challenge has been allowing myself to be absent from all these meetings that everybody wants to call.
Amen.
Wow. So now let's shift gears for a moment, and we're going to touch on a couple of heady conversations. First of all, I want to talk about preacher burnout. Okay, because it may be preacher burnout that may lead to what was a startling revelation by the CYAM youth and young adult officers a few weeks ago. And the first time I heard the phrase was, they said that there was a mass exodus of preachers in the CME church. Okay. And so we want to talk about these issues. We want to talk about preacher burnout. What's going on in the heart and mind? There was a young preacher, I won't call his name, but he wrote a very passionate note on Facebook and said that he was leaving the CME church. And I've only known him to be a preacher of promise, but I don't know all the details. You don't know what's going on inside of a preacher,
Right.
you know, that calls them. He's still planning to preach the gospel, okay, but just not in the CME church. And I'm convinced that if we don't have candid conversations, if we don't put it on the table, per se, and discuss it, you may see some more burnout, and sometimes burnout will lead to some choices that may not be good for the church. So I'm throwing it out here to anybody who wants to catch it and take it. Talk about, Pastor. Have you ever felt burned out?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
okay, all of us getting in on that one.
Yeah,
Go ahead, and
please
I'll
do.
follow you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. But going back to the question, because I think it's one that is extremely relevant for this time, is this question, and it's one that people, the audience, has probably waiting to hear us talk about, and that is this mass exodus. And in my comments earlier, this exodus is nothing new.
Right.
This people have been leaving, preachers have been leaving the CME church for decades. I don't think that it has been or we have seen the numbers as high as they have been in this recent decade. And it's for a myriad of reasons. You said it, Dr. Skip, yourself. It's for a myriad of reasons. Is there a mass exodus of preachers in the CME church? Yes, it is. The question is, why? Some are burnt out, and burnt out from what? Because the same kind of efforts that you put into ministry outside of the CME church or in the CME church could very well or should be the ones that you do outside of or when you leave. It could be trauma. Some pastors have left because they were traumatized by leadership decisions, and it traumatized them. Some can't handle itinerant ministry. Itinerant ministry is if you are really not ready for itinerant ministry and to move when you are assigned to move, you're going to have problems in the CME church. Some I feel entitled, that I didn't get this particular church I was promised to. I've gone to school, I've done that. So there's a spirit of entitlement also. But I think that the conversation needs to be real. Sarita Collins put on, she had a comment on there earlier, I think shortly after I had made my remarks, is that not only do we need to hear why they left, but we need to hear what remains. Why is it that we remain? Because I think a lot of us have left the church mentally. I think a lot of us have left the church mentally. That if one more thing happened, I'm out.
Yeah.
If this happens one more time, I'm out. So the real conversations, just like the conversations on racism, need to be real. And we need to stop skirting around the issue. Yes, there is a mass exodus. Why? It's individual. I'm glad that those that have left, and I'll close with this, I'm glad those that have left have found a place to be. I'm glad that their gifts are being utilized in the kingdom, and that they found somewhere to land. So I'm really thankful for that. But the sooner we have candid conversations, the better off I think we'll be.
So let's start here, and then Reverend Val, Dr. Val, I want you to chime in. I thought this was an interesting point. It isn't always burnout. Please stop shifting it on the preacher and not the system. I need somebody to respond to that. But Dr. Val, go ahead, please.
One of the things I want to share, thank you so much, Elder. That was so profound. I've been on both sides of the track where I've served in the academy. I've served as a director of student life at ITC. I've served as a university chaplain, director of religious life at both Clark Atlanta and Lincoln. I've served as an adjunct as well. And so when you look at where the direction in your heart is and the weight of it, I compare it, right? And so I'm at the university level, I had a different kind of audience. I had an audience of people who chose to come. And it was a difference in having 400 or 500 young people, young adults, come to the church because they want to be a part of the church. And finding this a safe space, good, bad, and different, whatever happened, I need to find my space, as opposed to being in this space where people come because this is my church, and then we get this, and I'm going to be here when you leave because it is itinerant. And so you have people now saying, you know what, I do have choices now. When you look at the weight of it, even as we served in the pandemic, we did not get a chance to breathe. You continue, and now it's a new conference year. And then so younger kids, I still have a lot of mentees are saying, I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my husband. I don't want my children bounced around. I don't want to settle for a salary, and then I may not even be able to retire when it's time for us to retire. But another piece of it is too, I believe that our wonderful church should do, again, is take a look at the various ministries that are available, and for us to not just look at full connection and being a pastor at a first, second, or third church is the epitome or the measure of us being successful in ministry. Because now, again, you can go into chaplaincy and you can go into the hospitals or you can go into the military. There's so many different avenues, but I think that if we're affirmed in what area God is directing us, I think that will help us as well. But I do believe that we do need to have those conversations, but not only a conversation, but the what next, because we don't want to lose all of our young people, right? Somebody has to still preach. But we got to have those conversations. And once we hear those conversations, be willing to respond to those conversations.
Somebody chime in.
I think that probably...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Dunbar.
No, you got the shield up in the back, Doc, so I'm going to let you go ahead and speak first, brother.
Part of what I think we have to realize is how much the itinerant system of Methodism goes against the culture of where we are now. We are in a cultural shift of individualism, where many of us simply care about ourselves individually and maybe our clan. And a system of itinerancy and connectional church goes against that individualistic thread that's running through our culture. Another thing we have to look at, and I want to pull in something that Dr. Jeremiah Hill said in terms of let's just not look at burnout, but there's another expression called flame out. And if I remember it correctly, burnout is when a person sort of closes in on themselves, they smother out. But flame out is more of an explosion where what's happening with me individually expands and I take someone else down with me. And so all of the persons that we talk about in this Exodus may not necessarily be expressions or experiences or episodes of burnout, but some of those have flamed out. There's been some damage. One end, both ends, not just individual, on a group of people that has helped push the severing of the relationship. At the same time, we have, I think, invested or supported the Exodus by using the language of investment. One of the issues that I've taken with our church is we have become so committed to the language of investment when I believe that investment is not germane to what we do and who we are as the body of Christ. Our church, the church, is the reason why I think Scripture gives us the model or the metaphor of the body, because we all have different offices. We all have different roles and parts to play. And yet we are part of one body and we all must contribute. But because we move away from the metaphor of body and go into the business model of investing, then it puts me as a consumer into a position of always assessing, what am I getting from this? And now when I feel like I'm getting nothing, then what do? I take my investment and I place it somewhere else. And so the more that we talk about investing, the more we give the fuel to continue the exodus that's already been started. We only have so many churches or so many places to put people. Retirement age for us is 74. And so with limited spaces and with this long window to serve to a retirement, there's really not room for everybody to get to the place where they believe they deserve, should, or are entitled to be.
Right. So what you're really saying, there's only so many number 1, 2, and 3 churches on the district. Somebody's going to have to fall somewhere who may have the education and the experience and the background, and it may not necessarily be the place that they want. Go ahead.
Sometimes people want to advance and be considered. See, y'all gave me a mic now, but they won't make the full commitment. See, the other thing in our church, and the General Conference looked at legislation about this the last time around, in terms of who could be admitted into full connection, right? Well, some of us on this line are pastors. We are fully invested, fully committed to the itinerant ministry. But there are others who may come along who all they want to do is be wherever they are.
Okay.
They don't want to go anywhere, don't want to do anything else. God has called me for children's ministry, and I want to do children's ministry right where I am forever. That's great. It's needed. But at the same time, when you push to become admitted into full connection, but your mind stays local, then you've created a scenario, and we've created a scenario where there are those in the church and ministry who look at you a certain way because you have not made the full commitment to be subject to the godly admonition of the bishop for where you will go every year. You don't want to make the commitment of every April, May, and June. You're afraid to open your mailbox because you might have a certified letter in there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think the system, I think Elder Williams said it a minute ago, itinerancy is not for everyone.
Right.
And if we begin to take that on trial period a little more seriously about what it means, we might be able to help some people to understand early after confessing a call that itinerant ministry is not for them. And we can help channel them into some areas of ministry and maybe some places of ministry that may be better suited to who they are and how they're called.
You said a mouthful about that trial system. That's another conversation. Chaplain, and I want you to respond to, and of course, Reverend Tiffiany. Now we know you just got an appointment. We're not trying to run you out, honey.
It's okay, because I definitely want to respond to this.
We're gonna have you. We're gonna let Chaplain Dunbar respond, and then we're going to ask you to do that. But I also want to, before you come, Chaplain, I think this is Dean Paul Brown from ITC, Dr. Paul L. Brown, who wrote a book called Stress in the Pulpit. And the pulpit is stressful. Okay, the pulpit is stressful. It comes with the territory. But he said something. We need to be clear about this issue. Preachers have been leaving the church for years. I believe what makes this issue so pressing now is that many persons who are leaving are simply sharing why. And so we're hearing it. We're seeing the names. There was a post on a Facebook page, a member's Facebook page, with a list of names of people who either left the church or left the pulpit or transitioned to something. And it was quite a revelation, to say the least, to see the names listed. But Chaplain, what do you say, brother?
So I am listening to all of the concerns, which are very valid, and I'm thinking to myself, the challenges of the church is kind of like Thanksgiving. There's more food than table to put the food on. And so we have all of these challenges. We don't have enough table to to put our challenges or our issues so that we can address them. One of the things that I really see about the church that we will not discuss or talk about is the issue of mental health. Mental health is a serious issue in the church. Not only is mental health an issue, but spiritual health, relational health. There are serious issues that the church will not address. And so here it is. You have preachers. You have encouraged them to go to seminary. You've encouraged them to go and get their masters and doctorates and get all of these different degrees. And several of us have gone into debt trying to achieve these accolades. And then you appoint these preachers to churches, and now you want them to be mental health experts. You want them to be relationship experts and spiritual experts. And sadly, seminary didn't train for any of those areas. And so you have these challenges that come up. But as I'm listening to my colleagues who are spot on, because I have experienced a lot of these same challenges as a pastor myself, one of the things that I look at is we have to look at context. Not every context is the same. And so you can't provide a solution and then try to fit it into every context. It'll never work. But we have to look at the individual situations and assess them from where they are. I'm actually out of the pulpit, and I know there's some people who were asking the question, why is Dunbar? Where are you going next? What church are you going to? And my response was, I'm not pastoring at all. I don't want to be in the pulpit. My theme and my slogan lately has been, the world is my pulpit. And a part of that has been my disappointment as a pastor and as a presiding elder at some of the things that I had to deal with. I was told, and I'm not calling names, I'm not blasting anybody, I'm just telling you what I was told. I was told that I was doing too much in the community. And that shocked me, because I was like, that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And so, again, it goes, I think it's based upon context. When you tell me that I'm doing too much in the community, and when I'm hearing from members saying that they don't want to support this preacher because they don't want to see me get the credit, as if like I was working to get credit, that becomes very disappointing. And so my thing now is to just step away. I'd rather step back and let you have it, let you do it your way. And I'll just go and do something. I'll do the same things without a pulpit and still be able to bless God's people and still be able to get to the needs of people. I don't need a pulpit. And I don't mean any harm with saying that. I don't need a pulpit to do ministry. We can do ministry wherever we are. And so we have to look at context. And I think, Dr. Skip, if we're not looking at individual context, then we're trying to put all of these ingredients into one bowl and make this great church, and it'll never happen that way, because we're all different.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna call you James because you're my brother. Yes, you're my homeboy, and we go way back. I was totally stunned when I saw that you had been relocated. And of course, the first thing is that, well, you went back closer to home in South Carolina, and that you were going to be pastoring a church there. And then when you told me that you were not pastoring, I was stunned, because we know what an excellent pastor and excellent presiding elder you've been, and a community servant, and we need to have our CME preachers not only serving their their congregations, but being visible in the community. You know, where the CME preacher is the CME church.
That's
You
right.
know, and I'm always sensitive.
Amen.
And my friends, my boys, my pastor friends who watching now, we gonna talk later. They know I get livid when there's a group of preachers together at an event or something, and you have a preacher from this denomination and from this denomination, and the CME church is not there.
It's not represented.
And so I don't make assumptions, you know, that we were not contacted. But you know, I just want to say that to you and thank you, because if we don't be candid about it, you know, if we don't talk about it, this is therapy for me too as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we use Facebook for therapy. You know, Facebook is the couch, okay, for a whole lot of folks. But we have to have honest conversations and be able to feel confident that we can be in a safe space, that there will not be any repercussions, you know, because we are sharing what's on the heart and mind of what's going on in the life of our preachers. And folks got a lot to say. I can't keep up with the comments that are coming in. Reverend Tiffiany, we're going to let you chime in. And then I want to put up another question for you all, pretty much in the same vein and vernacular that we've been discussing. And Reverend Tiffiany, you are a daughter. Let me see if I can find that picture of the parsonage, you know, and your dad, I think, is that it? Yes, that's the picture of your dad. Dr. Desi Echoles, and also you've been around this thing for a long time.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I have.
And so you know the perils of ministry. You know, in fact, let me segue next week, so I can plug my show for next week, Elder LaBisha, Dr. Val. I'm having the OGs of the CME church. I have a group of preachers and pastors who have been pastoring the same church, some for over 25, 30 years, which is a rarity in the CME church, or have been pastoring. So gather next week, because the OGs of the CME church will be on to talk about how in the world did they stay in the game and stay in one church and stay in ministry for that length of time. But Reverend Tiffiany, go right ahead, please.
I think I'm about to get in some trouble, but I'm going to say this. I really don't feel the appreciation coming into this and being appointed the pastor of a church that had so many issues, not only financially, but spiritual issues, and having to basically start over with this particular congregation. And I was doing the best that I could. I was doing my best. And even after the accomplishments, it was still, you guys haven't paid any money towards the conference assessments. You guys haven't done this, and you guys haven't done this. So it was an issue of telling me what I have not done and not saying, but Reverend Echoles, we appreciate you taking on this challenge. We appreciate you coming in and you saying, okay, with all these issues, I'm still going to do my best. So having to, in a sense, start over. You have trainings on the importance of paying tithe and offering, something that we feel that the congregation should already know. But the reality is, let's have these trainings. What is the importance of paying our tithe and offering?
Right.
Come to find out that some of them were put in positions not knowing what they were supposed to do. So now let's have a training and let's have a workshop so you have a clear understanding of what it is that you're supposed to do now that your name has just been put on this report for quarterly conference purposes.
Right.
So having the workshop and doing these different things, and now we are on a roll. The members are learning. They're expressing that they're learning. The members are expressing that they are appreciative, but not just the congregation now, but now higher ups. The focus is still but you haven't done this, but you haven't done that. So I think a lot of times for me, because let me be honest, and I think I'm about to shock my daddy when I say this, because I know he's listening. But prior to my appointment, I too was about to say goodbye to the CME church.
My.
Not even being in a position to be appointed to a church as a pastor yet. And so now I'm in this and I'm praying every day. Again, Lord, help me to continue to press my way through. Because again, the appreciation, I don't feel the love.
Right.
It's coming from other denominations within the community that the church sits in, but it's not coming from my own.
Yeah.
And Dr. Williams touched on being on trial.
Yeah.
Yes, I am still, because I have not yet been admitted into full connection. But at the same time, I am, and I did make this a point. This was my choice to do this.
Right.
My choice.
Right.
But don't treat me like I'm in a fraternity or a sorority.
Okay.
Don't treat me like we're pledging.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what happens in while we're on trial. So a lot of times, even the ones that are on trial, they're saying, don't worry about this. Is not for me.
Right.
I will remain local if this is the treatment that I'm going to get. So I think a lot of times, again, it's the treatment and we're not being appreciated.
Wow. Let me share this, and then I want you to jump in from Dr. Shazetta Thompson here, who's been a guest on this show, and I can't wait for her to come back. What is true is that this is painful for many of us. But when you have to choose between the church you love and adequately feeding your family and educating our children in good school systems for longer periods of time rather than making them subjects to the whims of Episcopal leadership, then we have larger ethical issues at play. In truth, it feels like the church is out here playing Hunger Games with our lives at times. And let me say this so I can be very clear. We're not airing dirty laundry, right? Because this is going on in a lot of churches, a lot of denominations. The purpose of this is hopefully to let some preacher, pastor who is at wit's end know that they're not by themselves. That you seasoned preachers, pastors, elders. You got the young ones who are just coming in, like Reverend Tiffiany and others in between, who have experienced that. And have found ways to try to deal with it and understand. We got the system, I think, as Dr. Hill said, we got pastoral burnout. Is there such thing as pastoral abuse?
Absolutely.
Do you think?
Being abused and being the abuser.
Yeah. By congregation, it goes both ways. Okay. Yes, but we're just kind of putting it out, here on the table for some kind of discussion. And then I hope, and so I want you to think about this, because this is the kind of the closing, and we're not getting ready to close now. We got a little bit more time. So we open up with, what would you say to the College of Bishops? So I want you all to now, you got 13 folks who want to be a bishop, who are running for bishop. What do you say to them?
Run, Forrest. No. No.
What could they possibly say or do that would convince you that, yes, this is the candidate, this is the Episcopal leader that we need to elect, because he or she is going to come in and do what? So think about that. But the pastor's table is just open now for conversation, for discussion about matters of the heart. And what I want to do now is take some time to talk about what's on your heart and mind right now as it relates to the church. Dr. Val, we'll start with you.
It's so much. Oh my God. I think one of the things, again, that I had said earlier, that we've been in a pandemic for 15 months, right? And so we keep going. How do you keep going? At what point are we able to stop and to breathe, and to assess and to figure out how we go forward? because we just keep going and going and going and going. And that's a concern for me. Where are we as pastors? Where are we as a people? How do we respond to this thing and be able to move forward in a healthy way? That's a big concern for me. What has happened to us physically, emotionally, psychologically, those things, because we haven't had a chance to breathe, and we just have to keep going forward. And at some point, again, if you don't have a therapist and you don't have a support system, you're gonna burn out. You're gonna just walk away from it. So that for me is, again, what are we gonna do? And if I had the opportunity to talk to those who want to become bishops, what are we gonna do to try to make sure the families stay healthy and whole and individuals as we continue to try to carry a church in the midst of a pandemic?
Anybody chime in?
I'm baffled and amazed at this point. I guess in my ministry, as I look at the world, I am baffled and amazed at how so many of us preachers and people spent so much time railing against prosperity preaching at the turn of the century. And yet those prophetic preaching principles have infiltrated our church, and in large part are driving some of the issues that we see in the church today. We spent so long railing against prosperity preaching, with all of our language about investing, all of our language about, oh, they don't pay me enough to deal with that. All these are principles that we just adopted and adapted from that whole prosperity movement. How much of our preaching focuses on haters, about everybody got haters, they don't like you, get rid of them, move on. That's so much of our preaching. It has moved us away from a sense of community, a sense of family, a sense of being the body of Christ. Now we talk and preach finances much more than we do faith. I think most times when I hear faith talk now, it's about faith for finances, but not the faith of a God who can provide and a God who can keep if we trust. That's on my heart. It's also on my heart, even as I listened to and read some of the comments as they scrolled across the screen, how so many of us, because I think of our narrow-mindedness, we look so much at the problem that we have as being a problem of leadership. And even on the post that Dr. Skip talked about earlier on Facebook, and even today, oh, the leadership needs to look, oh, the leadership. But if we're talking about pastors being burned out, of preachers having a false sense of what it means to be itinerant or CME, it's not just leadership's fault. Because every one of us, every last one of us on the line is pastor or reverend somebody right now. But we all started out as brother or sister somebody. And there were some local churches who looked at us. And they said that we were ready for this. And oftentimes, it's not just the leadership, the Episcopal leadership. Sometimes it's the lay leadership who don't have enough courage to see that there are some issues that we have as lay persons trying to move into ministry that we need to address. But they advance us along, hoping it would get caught at the next level. And sometimes we complain about what's sent to us, but what's sent to us is what we sent to the conference.
Is what we approved at the conference. Absolutely.
It's what we approved.
Absolutely.
But I think we have to move past a lot of this passing the buck, and begin to understand that our issues are not just a leadership issue. It's from the lowest of the lay to the highest of the episcopacy.
Yeah.
Anybody, just jump in.
It is so much, but what I'm seeing scrolling across the comments, scrolling across the screen, there are some traumatized individuals in our church.
Yes.
And it's people and system. The system needs to be looked at. We have, when the hierarchy of the system is played out properly, it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
It's an accountability, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But when we understand that the organization is as great as its people, if we are finding that the organization is not that great, then we need to take a look at the system and the people.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know of stories of how individuals have been put in places that have no business there. Our system as a church only looks at one spiritual gifting of the church, of that the Spirit of God gave to the church, and that is the office of pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And so unfortunately, we have pastors who are really teachers and should be in the academy. We have evangelists that are pastors and should be evangelizing or in a particular area. We have people who are bishops at heart. They don't necessarily have to have a title, but they are bishops at heart. We have apostles in the church, but we only talk about pastoral ministry. And so I'm with Van, and I would love to call you Dr. Williams, but you know where you and I stand. Okay,
you knew me when I was Sir Van Carl. You call me.
But we've got problems in the system because it's a man-made system.
Okay.
We've got problems with people. And so our conversations, we've got to have, just like we keep pushing this Black Lives Matter, and we've got to have these conversations about racism and all the other injustices that are going on in our world. And so it is within our context. We're talking about pastoral abuse. We're talking about abuse from Episcopal leadership. We're talking about abuse from, and people are traumatized, and rather than to stay in an abusive relationship, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I'm going to leave.
Let me interrupt you. So yes. Can we call that the Simone Biles effect? Because what she really did was to say, I'm not dealing with this.
I can't do this.
Okay. And so I'm not going to compete. All right. And I'll decide what I want to do. And so some of our preachers now are doing that. Okay. Many of us have stayed in for years, and we withstood the test of time, barely dragging one leg, trying to put on the face and be that preacher when we are totally broken inside, and trying to do our best to, care for our parishioners and that kind of thing. So, I'm glad you brought that up because, if we don't address the issue, okay, then the issue continues. And so my question is, Elder, then where do we fix the system? How do we fix the system, y'all? We're talking about it now. How do we fix it? Is it done at the annual conference? Is it done at the general conference? Is it done through resolution? No. How do we fix this? How do we address the issue and then fix the system?
Let me say this, because I think that we first of all we don't have to think about this as a church phenomenon, however, because it's happening across multiple professions. Mm-hmm. The average person who even goes into education only stays there for 5 years, average, before they move on to something else. But again, part of it is because the sense of longevity and commitment that may have been present a few generations ago is no longer present, because now it's about individuality and it's about a sense of happiness or fulfillment. And we're willing to search for it until we find it. And we spiritualize it in the church and give it the language of I'm on a journey, or my season there was up. A few years ago, it was just called church hopping, or it was called being uncommitted. But now we can spiritualize it and we can make it more palatable for those who are going through it. Now, when you talk about how do we begin to fix it, one of the ways we begin to fix it is we have to begin to hold our own selves accountable. We have to do that.
Yeah.
Because as
What
I
part
heard you
did he
raise the
say?
question, I thought about the General Conference of 2018. In 2018, I remember submitting a resolution that said that churches could create strategic growth plans, and if they had a plan, they had some annual goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They could request a multi-year appointment. They had all these other little caveats. You couldn't request it for longer than the bishop was going to be there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when that plan came up, it was shot down by laypersons. I went to the committee meeting and they shot it down. And they said things like, well, if I have a problem, I can just call my bishop directly. And this looks like it's trying to take away my power to be able to do that. It was lay people who shut it down. When it came to the floor of the General Conference, and I stood up and argued on the floor, we took about an hour and a half getting through it. And it ended up losing on the floor by one vote. Now, I don't mind losing, but what ticked me off afterwards, at least 20 people came up to me and said, you know, I never read that resolution to know what it was about, but now that I read it, I should have voted for that. Oh, really? You were sent to represent your region at the highest level of the church and didn't even prepare yourself to be there?
Yeah.
By reading the legislation that you were supposed to be considering? Again, part of fixing it is not just about pointing the finger, but it's about looking at the man, the woman, and the child in the mirror.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody? Matters of the heart. What's on your heart?
Can I just offer, in the midst of the mental, the physical challenges that we face as a people, we cannot forget the spiritual side of this.
Exactly.
Paul says, and this was my saving grace, and I'm not here to preach, but let me go ahead and take a text. Ephesians 6:12. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you can take a person, and I'm just going to, I know Dean Paul Brown said that we got all alphas on here, so I'm just going to use the alphas that are present. I can have an issue with Dr. Skip about Dr. Skip using a red crayon. I don't like red crayons, and every time he uses a red crayon, it frustrates me. And Dr. Skip can go to a different place, a different context, a whole different community where I'm not even affected by Dr. Skip anymore. Now here comes Dr. Van Carlin, and he decides he wants to use a red crayon. And guess what it's going to do? It's going to frustrate me just as it did when Dr. Skip used that red crayon. We don't wrestle, but what I'm doing is every person that uses a red crayon, I'm attacking them instead of attacking the issue. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We have things that are around us daily, spiritually, that is tempting us, that is prodding us and poking us, and it's using people and things to try to disrupt us.
Yeah.
And if we don't realize that we got to come together in prayer, we got to come together as, you know, it's my goodness, it's interesting when a pastor or a community leader or whoever it is puts together a line of prayer or a time of meditation, a time of seeking God, and people don't participate. But then we talk about how spiritual we are. That is interesting to me. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. And so what the enemy does is the enemy floods us with the things that bothers us. And the enemy floods us through people and things. And we end up attacking the people and the things versus the spiritual agitator that's actually operating and actually moving all of these things and putting these things into place. So we cannot dismiss the spiritual side of this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this again. If I get in trouble, praise God. Our leaders, starting with with our bishops, our pastors, One thing that I tried to do with the pastors is when I was a presiding elder is we spent time in prayer every week. We made sure we came together for prayer. Our lay leaders, those persons who are in leadership positions, we have to come together and we have to invoke the presence of God into every single thing we do. In all of your ways, acknowledge the Lord, and the Lord will direct your path. I don't care what we talk about here on tonight. If God is not in it, it's not gonna win.
Right.
If God is not in it, we can forget it. If God is not in the CME church, we can close all of the doors, put for sale signs in our yards, sell the real estate, and we can go use that money and do something else with it. If God is not in it, it's not gonna work. And I'm gonna stand on that till the day I die. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Matters of the heart. Anybody? Go right ahead. What's on your heart right now?
I would actually have to agree with Chaplain Dunbar. Currently, I took 3 summer classes. I attend ITC, and the thing about it is, in taking these courses, because my focus is pastoral care, we do have to look at the spiritual side. We do have to make sure that we include that. The one thing that I had to remember is that when we are helping others, we are actually having to take a look at ourselves. We have to go and we have to really reflect on, like Chaplain Dunbar said, what is the issue that I have with this red crayon that I'm taking it out on other people? And so a lot of times, most of us have issues that have been there for numerous of years that we have never addressed. But now that we become in leadership positions, now we are projecting that frustration and that anger out on the people that we pastor. And so they are now frustrated. They don't know what's going on. And so guess what they do? I no longer want this person to be my shepherd. And so the phone calls go to the presiding elder, the phone calls go to the bishop. And what we do is we send that pastor on to another congregation who is reflecting those same issues. And now the check and balance is now abusing that next congregation because the issue has never been addressed. And so we have to address our issues before we go in. The one thing that I do not want to do when I am going through something, when I am dealing with something personal, Elder Williams, I cut my phone off. I tell my family, do not call me, do not say anything. I tell my girls, I tell my children, listen, if your grandmama and your granddaddy call you because they can't get to me, let them know I cannot talk right now because I'm going to God. I have to go deep within myself. Lord, help me. Not only that, but I have those persons that I can go to, that I can talk to and say, listen, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on. And so they say, now that I've heard you, let's get to the root of the problem. Because what I don't want to do, I don't want to go to my congregation and bleed all over them. That, to me, when people do that, we are victimizing our congregation. And in my line of profession, I really have to go and I have to take some mental time. I have to take those times that I cannot go and I'm just mute, y'all. I have to be mute. Being a police officer, even in this day and age, I have to take that time and I have to reflect on self, because one thing I do not want to do, I do not want to project or transfer that negative energy, or transfer that hurt, or transfer that depression and that stress onto others. So we really do have to go and we have to figure out what is causing this issue. Why every time I see this person, I instantly get an attitude? Why every time they walk through the door, I'm instantly aggravated, I'm instantly frustrated. They may present an idea and I shut it down. But when this particular member over here brings the same issue, the same idea, I'm all for it. What is the problem that I have with this person? And so we really have to do a lot of times the check and balances and that self-reflection.
Reverend Echoles and Chaplain Dunbar, you all remind me, listening to you all speak just now, you remind me of a foundational story that has informed so much of my ministry since I have fallen in love with it. It's one of the stories I love to read, and I always challenge and encourage other preachers to read it too. And it's the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And I love that story. And it's a story that has informed my ministry and myself and my own awareness. Because in the context of it, Jesus just hears that his cousin, John the Baptist, has been beheaded. And it said Jesus was trying to get away, presumably to be alone with his grief. And so he crossed over Lake Gennesaret. And it says, as he was going to be alone with his grief, these people followed him. And I always raise the question, well, then why did Jesus feed the 5,000? Why did he even engage with them? There's a key word. It says, when Jesus looked at the crowd, he was moved with compassion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that has become such a key story for me, because I try to live in such a way that I'm in tune with where God is in me and how God is moving and directing me. And if I don't find myself being moved with compassion, then I don't do whatever it is. I'll miss a meeting. I'll ignore a phone ringing if I don't find myself being moved. Because I used to be overwhelmed by all the things coming at me. And I was like, geez, I need to be alone. And I had to learn to value that alone time, that time just to be alone with God, and only let it be disturbed when I feel God disturbing me and telling me to be engaged and moving me with compassion.
Dr. Skip, we've heard a lot of, and we've seen a lot of comments on today, and a lot of them are coming from, I believe, possibly people who have been hurt. We hear the phrase that hurt people hurt other people. Tiffiany, you were talking about just sort of pushing yourself away and getting away. I took the opportunity to take the CPE class that the CME Church offered. And it changed my life. It really did. As old as I am, it changed my life in those 9 months that I really had to take a look at myself and understand how I do ministry and why I operate the way that I do in ministry. Van, we need to take, a look at ourselves. We really do need to take a look at the man in the mirror and see what it was that we did, if anything at all. What part did we play in particular outcomes, incomes? Because we can point fingers at Episcopal leaders all day long, but this situation has been going on. This kind of stuff has been going on for decades. I am 62 blessed years old, and I know I look good for my age. But I'm just saying, I have been a member of the CME Church all of my life. And this kind of system eradications, system abuse has been going on. We don't want to talk about it, but it has been going on because it is a man-made denomination, and we are dealing with the human condition.
Yeah.
As pastors, laity, system, all of it. You asked the question, Skip, Dr. Skip, where do we go from here? John Dillard just asked the question, where
Yes.
do we go from here? Because we can continue to point fingers all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Yes, we are connectional, but how do we as pastors talk it out? As a presiding elder, one of the things that the Spirit has just shared with me that I want to do for my district is to make sure that I hear my pastors and hear what it is, because some of them are going off of and playing off of erroneous information.
Right.
Because they don't know the church. They have not invested the time to understand the system and whether or not I even fit in this. Where do we need to have conversations? Maybe Episcopal leaders in each of their regions need to have candid conversations and not take it personal. This is not a personal thing. This is what I'm feeling. Your actions have said this to me, because your actions speak louder than your words.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can tell me that you love me all day long, and until you show me, I'm not going to believe. I'll believe your actions quicker than I'll believe your words.
Yeah.
So we've got, we had a comment that we're imploding. Who wants to be a part of an organization that's imploding?
Mm-hmm.
And before we get too far gone, we have the power as the people of the organization to make it better.
Yeah.
And that's the question that we need to ask, not only Episcopal leaders, but ask ourselves.
Yeah.
How are we going to make this better?
That's right. Because it's so easy to identify what the problems are and what the issues are. We know that. The platform creates that. But where do we go from here is the question. I'm going to ask you all now to make your closing statements. Okay. And Dr. Valerie Everett, we're going to begin with you. And I met Dr. Val. Dr. Val, I think, was at Clark, Atlanta. She was a phenomenal chaplain. That ministry over there was popping. I'm telling you, I've never seen so many young people engaged in the ministry. And she invited me over to preach one Sunday. And then I think you went to Lincoln University. And
I had Lincoln first, and then
you had Lincoln
Atlanta.
first, and then Clark, Atlanta. So she's
right.
seasoned, great preacher, great pastor, and I'm so glad that she finally found a place where the internet was consistent, because I wanted her to remain on this conversation. But Dr. Val, you've been around this church, and we didn't even touch on in this conversation, women in the CME church. That's another whole. I've had that conversation before, and I'm going to have it again. Not necessarily in this setting, but that's another whole issue, because when I posted on my Facebook page, my Vanishing Black Atlanta, about some pastors who had been pastoring churches for over 20 plus years or so, and it was brought to my attention that you probably won't find any female pastor in that position. And that was quite not so much startling, but certainly resounding. But Dr. Val, give us your closing thoughts in this moment. I'm going to ask each of you to give us your closing thoughts as we get ready to close out. And what was to be an hour-long program this Sunday afternoon with you great pastors is now been an hour and 40 minutes. You have been so gracious in your time, and I appreciate it. And obviously the people who are watching, I'm gonna have to come back and read the comments, but they have been very, very compelling. And I'm appreciative to you for putting your comments in. But Dr. Val, we'll start with you. Then we will go to Dr. Van Call. We'll go to Reverend Echoles, Presiding Elder Williams, and Chaplain Dunbar, in that order.
Thank you again, Dr. Mason, and to all of my esteemed colleagues. Again, I am truly grateful to have the opportunity to come and share. And so for me, as I leave, when we talk about where do we go from here, I think, again, we need to start within our local congregations and to be able to create those safe spaces where we can share how we're feeling. And as I had shared earlier, my concern was we just keep going and going and going until we get to a place of we just give up or we walk away. So I am committed, and I pray that my colleagues are committed as well, that we'll continue this conversation, but we begin with our local congregations to be able to have those candid conversations about how they're feeling and what we can do to support each other, and then to make it even larger and go to our districts, and then make it larger and go to our connectional officers. So that's where I am, the commitment of making sure that we are good, mind, body, and spirit. And it's okay to agree, to disagree, but also have that safe space to be able to work through as we continue to go forward. And thank you for this opportunity to share.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear sister. I appreciate you. The Right Reverend Dr. Van Carl Williams, give us your closing thoughts.
I would say that we have become too comfortable with death. And by we, I mean we individually, and we as an institution, as a church, we have become too comfortable with death. We've become too comfortable seeing declining numbers. We've become too comfortable seeing empty sanctuaries. And this was even before the pandemic. And if the question is, where do we go from here? I would answer that by saying, we have to commit to live. We have to commit ourselves to moving beyond this place of death and moving again into a place of life. And that place is where the Lord is. I had a professor in seminary, William Abraham, who would often say, find out where God is moving and get there. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to wait for God to come to you. You need to get to where God is. And my prayer for our church and our people, our members, is that we would find out where God is moving and we would begin to get there. Many of us have closed our doors to in-person worship during this pandemic, but it's a wonderful time to prepare for a rebirth, because the doors won't be closed forever. But even as we do our virtual worship and our online ministry, we have to begin to prepare and re-envision and reimagine what the church can be when it is fully reopened. And I'm committing myself, I pray that you commit yourself to making sure that you are alive and that where God has stationed you to serve is alive and well too.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, my brother. Pastor Tiffiany Echoles, your closing thoughts, please.
Dr. Skip, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be in this platform, to sit with some distinguished persons. Thank you again. My closing thought would just be, again, we have identified the issues. We can talk about the issues all day long, but we need to have and decide on a plan of action, and not only just decide on it, but we need to execute that plan of action. If we do not, sad to say, we are going to lose even more. That Facebook post that listed those individuals that have left or gone into a different direction, I'm sad to say, if we do not take actions and have these tough conversations and address these issues, that list is going to get longer. So again, discussing the issues is one thing, but we need to have a plan of action and execute that plan.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor Echoles. Elder Lavisha,
yes, sir.
Give us your closing thoughts, my sister.
My closing thoughts come from Psalm 133, verses 1 through 3. And if you'll give me just a quick second, the psalmist writes, how very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. It is like the precious oil on the head running down upon the beard, on the beard of Aaron, running down over the collar of his robes. And I've said a lot as it pertains to the issues. When you read the thread, there are a myriad of issues as it pertains to people and the system. And I think that if I want to just piggyback on Sister Tiffiany, Pastor Tiffiany, that our conversations, it is imperative that our conversations begin immediately, if not sooner, and be able to have real, candid, transparent, safe conversations about the system and the people in the system and how the system is played out in the lives of ministry. The psyche or the psychology of itinerant ministry and the system has affected us all individually and collectively. Mm-hmm. We are bleeding, and we are bleeding on congregations and bleeding on one another.
Jesus.
And if we don't close the wounds, if we don't go to the balm in Gilead, the oil will cease and stop flowing. And we don't want the oil to stop flowing. The oil begins at the head and flows down. If the oil has stopped up here, it's not going to flow down to the local church. And so my prayer is for this great denomination that I love and have served and have had opportunities to be in places and to be on platforms that men and women, many men and women have not been. I thank God for the CME Church. My heart hurts right now for the CME Church. And I pray that we get it together sooner than later. Yeah. Dr. Skip, thank you again so much for this opportunity. You have been a blessing throughout the years, but surely through this pandemic, you have kept us abreast of how our Zion is doing. And for that, I personally want to say thank you, my brother.
Bless
Love
you.
You so much.
Love you more. Bless you, my sister. Thank you.
Bless you.
And last but certainly not least, Chaplain James L. Dunbar. Give us your closing thoughts, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Again, as it has been echoed by everyone, Dr. Skip, man, I appreciate you. You are truly more than just a fraternity brother. You are my brother beloved. And, I thank God for you. And to each of these, my sisters and brothers in ministry, please know that I'm praying for you. Pastor Tiffiany, know that I'm definitely lifting you up as you continue the beginning of your journey. And I pray that God will open doors that you could never imagine to be open. I want to just share from 1 Peter 4:8. Peter says to us, above everything else, let us love each other deeply. Let us put aside all of our differences. Let us put aside our agendas and our personal goals and aspirations. Let us just take time to love on each other, to share some kind words to each other, to offer up words of affirmation, words that would confirm each other. Peter says, let us love one another. Let us love each other. And then he says deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Mm-hmm. I believe that if we focused more on the love for each other, we would see that the sin, which seems like a mountain at times, seems like a mountain that we can't climb. If we just begin to love on each other, we'll see that those mountains are actually molehills, and we can get over any challenge, any situation, anything that's going on around us, we can get over it because we have learned to adopt loving one another. I love you all. There's nothing you can do about it. So as I always say, feed your faith. You'll starve your doubts to death. God bless.
Well, you all have truly blessed me. You blessed those who have been listening. And my takeaway is that we would be kinder, gentler to each other in the ministry. Sometimes fellow preachers and pastors can be mean as snakes to each other.
To each other.
Okay, to each other. And you don't know the level that other people are hurting as well. And it may mean that your hurt may be so deep that you don't realize that you're trying to cut and slice other folks as well. Okay. And we got to, and I see it on Facebook a lot. I see attacks and that kind of thing. So, and that's fine. And we continue to pray for healing. My good friend, Shannon Falk, shared these words. He texted me, and I think it's appropriate. He said, our denomination must have the courage and the foresight to ask the difficult questions on why our pastors are hurting and leaving. With most industry, when an employee leaves, there is an exit interview conducted to determine strengths and deficiencies of the institution, the company. We will never be able to address the issue if we don't know what the problems are. Okay. And so I'm gathering and taking this because I will be interviewing, as I've done all of the college of bishops and retired bishops, I'm going to be interviewing one-on-ones, those who are offering themselves as a candidate for the episcopacy. As Bishop Lake has said, you don't run for the position, but offering themselves as a candidate. And I'm going to pose some of the questions that have come up. And so we hope that our candidates will help us to move towards solutions and not just identifying what the problems are. Right. We know what the problems are. We know what the problems are. We're witnessing, we're living it right now. You all have been so gracious with your time. And as I tell all my guests, I owe you a meal at the General Conference in Cincinnati. So find me in the McDonald's dollar line. And you're welcome to order a cheeseburger, some fries, and a drink. Okay, on me for your kindness and for your time. I'm eternally grateful to each of you. I mean that too. I mean, we know you do. Look for me at the nearby McDonald's in Cincinnati. But we have been so blessed. And our church, we love our church. Make no mistake about it. Yes. But we love God even more. And God is able to do above and exceedingly what we can expect. Yes. And so we close out. Let me share, because Reverend C.C. Collins is doing great work, great ministry with the young people. The CYF, they have this wonderful 5G conference. So we're going to close out with this upcoming event. Register for the Unity Summit. Be engaged, be involved. That's where things happen and changes are made. And I look forward to seeing you all real soon. God bless each of you. Thank you for the generosity of your time. And we'll talk soon. Now, God bless you, Dr. Skip. Thank you. Thank you. My brothers and sisters, same time, God willing, next week. Who did I say will be here on next week? The OGs. And you better tune. You better be there or be square, as we used to say. Now, go in love and go in peace, and God bless you.
Amen. Save the date. On Saturday, August 28th, 2021, the Connectional Youth Ministry will have an experience like never before. The 5G Youth Experience. 5G stands for God's Guidance, Guarantees Growth and Greatness. In a world where we are now using 5G to enhance our phones, become faster and better, we can begin to understand that our 5G will always guarantee growth and greatness in our God. And it reads, let your roots grow down into Him, and let your lives be built on Him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. As we continue to upgrade our connection with our phones, we should be doing the same with God. So, on August 28th at 12 p.m. in your time zone, experience 5 speakers. 5 hours in 5 time zones, happening at a CME church near you. For more information, please visit cmecym.org/5G, and let's get excited.